Greetings and salutations, viewers and listeners. Welcome to episode 114 of Word Ninjas Live. I am your host, Charles, and joining me tonight are everybody else.
Hello, I am Will from the future's past, here to be in this podcast on the present.
I am not wearing any pants, Justin.
I'm Calvin, and I have nothing clever to say right now.
Perfect.
We are coming to you tonight to talk about time. Because it's about time to talk about time. It's been a while since we've talked about temporal mechanics. So it's...
Also, there's other reasons why we chose today.
Yeah, because we ran out of other talking points, so we had to start coming up with others, so this was one of the first ones that came to mind. Did Justin want to lead things off, talking about time?
Well, today's a special day for a lot of us 90s kids who grew up with a certain movie franchise in which there is time travel involved.
Was it the Terminator?
That is not the one I'm specifically talking about this time. That franchise has kind of gone off the rails.
Was it the Star Trek movie with the whales?
No, and it wasn't Generations, which also technically had time travel in it.
Yep.
It is the Back to the Future franchise. I haven't seen the movies in a very long time, so I may have the details wrong, but when they go to the future in Back to the Future 2, this is when they show up.
Yep. They even point out in the movie that it's on a Wednesday, so they were completely accurate.
And while I'm glad that we don't have any flying cars and hoverboards, I really wish I had self-lacing shoes. And I saw Nike put out something, but I didn't get a chance to look at it. It was like a minute before.
They actually did create self-lacing shoes, and they gave them to Michael J. Fox. And it is very amusing.
And allegedly they're going to be releasing those self-tying shoes in 2016 to the public.
Nice.
Allegedly. We'll see.
I'm sure there'll be a price tag associated with that.
For those who may be interested, I found a list of things that they predicted in Back to the Future 2 that actually did come true.
Do go on.
Tablets with touchscreens.
I feel like there's lots of literature and movies that predicted that.
I know, but shush. Tablets with touchscreens, hoverboards. There is a company that has a working prototype hoverboard.
That's extremely dangerous, and it's basically a giant quad, and if you fall into it, you get shredded. It's pretty bad.
Mr. Pessimist over there is going to denounce everything I say, apparently.
Well, I'm an engineer, and that shit is nuts.
It's the same thing as pessimist, basically.
Being an engineer? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
I don't see you not disagreeing there.
More on that later.
Wearable technology. Now that we have Google Glass and whatnot, they had something similar, though a little weirder looking back then in Back to the Future Part 2. Drones. They had camera drones that were basically hovering reporters in Back to the Future. And video conferencing, which is a thing now that I think most people probably take for granted, but in Back to the Future 2, it was a thing. I also want to say split screen, too, because there is a point where people are watching 6 television shows on one television at the same time. I don't know if you can do 6 right now, but I know you can do 4 on certain televisions with certain networks.
I've never attended a video conference of any sort where a bunch of people were on video and talking to each other.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that one's fake.
The technology's just not there yet.
Yeah, if you need to work out the bugs a little bit.
Oh, truth be told, joke's not. Joke's not.
Speaking of, where's my lower third?
Lower thirds are broken forever. You didn't know?
I'm the only one that ever seems to have it consistently.
Mine even says it's on right now, and it's not at all.
Mine is listed as on as well.
I just didn't bother.
Smart. Back to the Future definitely predicted that technology would be dumb, and they were right. I did also once wear a spaghetti strainer colander on my head, so they predicted that accurately as well.
So Edward just linked a thing saying that you can actually watch 9 channels at once thanks to Cablevision.
I don't even watch one channel anymore. Never mind 9.
The one on the side?
Yeah, so apparently not only 6, but you can now watch 9 television programs at once. So there you go.
Is it Fahrenheit 451 or 1984 where the house is basically made of televisions?
I want to say 1984.
I think that was 1984.
Yeah, it's been a good while since I've read either of them.
And consequently, not about time travel. But do you know what is about time travel? This long list of movies that we've come up with. And other media. I tried to mix it up a little bit. Since I spoke first, I guess I'll start things off. We broke it out into a few sections. Some of them I'm less familiar with than others. We will be talking about something that's not technically time travel, but is important for writing and time shifting, and that's parallel story arcs. We brought this up a couple episodes ago, but we want to talk a little bit more in depth about that. And the big block is the alternative timeline. When you go back in time and you fuck everything up, and what happens as a consequence?
Or fix everything.
Yeah, there's some of those there. And multiverse theory, where instead of going back in time to the same timeline, you go to a different timeline entirely. Oh god, I saw somebody add something.
Yeah, I just thought of one.
That is definitely a movie. And then there's the very similar to the alternate timeline. When you go back in time or go forward in time, but the timeline is fixed and you can't screw it up. You can, depending on the franchise, slightly alter it in some way, but you're basically destined. So there's no chance of you meeting yourself, because if you had met yourself, then that wouldn't be. Then you would have known that happened already. So that's literally impossible. It's the kind of thing where somebody goes back in time and they try to go see themselves, and the writer is in a jam, so he makes that guy get hit by a bus or run away, or something bad happens so he can't meet himself. That's usually how that works. And the comical, not taken very seriously versions of time travel.
Where there aren't really necessarily repercussions after all is said and done.
Laissez-faire time travel.
Screw things up.
I see here 2 things that I've mentioned I haven't read, but I've seen Game of Thrones, and that definitely has parallel stories going on. And then Discworld, which I have now, but haven't started reading yet.
Yeah, Discworld is more my knowledge compared to Game of Thrones. But Discworld has, I think, 6 or 7 primary points of view in regards to characters they focus on. And there's a lot of self-referencing between those storylines when certain city-wide or disc-wide events actually occur. So it actually does keep consistency across all the various plot arcs.
Has there ever been any terrible but probably amusing retconning as future books came out?
Probably, it would not surprise me, but none immediately come to mind. The only like blatant I am retconning this because reasons was, I believe, in the first or second book. Might have actually been the cliffhanger, literally because he fell off a cliff. Well, the edge of the disc because they shoved him off. And the spell in his head rearranged the universe just so that he would end up back on the continent. Because reasons.
Yep. It's a very silly series, and that's not a disparaging remark. It gives it its charm.
Silly in the way of like Monty Python level dry humor at times. Well, like the flying circus type of dry humor.
And Game of Thrones, on the other hand, has a lot of parallel story lines that involve entirely different sets of characters, and occasionally they meet up later in the series.
Now that the television series and the book series don't necessarily align, who knows?
Right. They're considered two separate works now.
Weird.
They're not canon. They're not each other's canon. In fact, there's a lot of stuff that happened in the show that happens not at all like in the book, from what I understand.
I know there's plenty of other examples of parallel storylines out there. I just couldn't come up with any. Discworld was the main one that came to mind.
There's a pair of Stephen King books. I'm trying to remember which two they were. It was like The Regulators, and I don't think Dolores Claiborne was the other one. But they were basically two stories from like two different points of view that kind of happened at the same time in the same universe. Somebody will have to write in and correct me. But the lion's share of time travel usually involves some sort of going back in time and altering it in some horrific manner, and either attempting to fix it or living with the horrible consequences, as was the aforementioned Back to the Future series. We're going into the past.
Fine.
Right. We're going into the past has consequences. And I'd say we go down this list that we wrote. We have a Google Doc open where we listed them all out. And whoever wrote in that entry can talk about it, because there's some of these that other people are going to be familiar with.
It's kind of a mishmash at this point, but most of us, if not all of us, have seen the Back to the Future series, or at least some of the movies. Maybe yes, no?
Yeah. I've even seen the point-and-click style video game that came out a few years ago.
The Telltale games?
Yeah.
I have not played that one.
You don't really play it so much as follow along with it, because it is like a Telltale games. There's a story, and you're just playing through the story. But it was an interesting story. It fit in with the standard Back to the Future feel.
It's kind of like an interactive visual novel.
Yeah.
Does anyone watch Rick and Morty?
Nope.
Does anyone know what I'm talking about?
Only because of Tumblr.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's basically a big, gross Adult Swim spoof on the whole Back to the Future franchise.
Any good?
I haven't actually seen it myself. I hear that it can be grating, but I also hear that it can be hilarious. So
like most Adult Swim shows.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
The thing I know about it is that Aaron Egoraptor Hansen somehow got one line in it, one episode, once.
Nice. And for Back to the Future, the main alternate storyline was when they messed up the past, correct?
Yes, that was the first one.
I've recently watched all three of them about a month ago, if you want
Ooh,
help.
you talk.
Yeah, I
Uh,
haven't seen them in forever.
And I know all the angry nerds are going to write emails if we say stuff wrong, so you might as well.
so, in the first one, Marty accidentally goes back in time because he's trying to get away from the terrorists with the RPG.
Silly Libyans.
Yeah, the Libyans, and accidentally screws up the past by accidentally preventing his father and mother from meeting each other for the first time, and takes his father's place, which made things really awkward when his teenage mother started hitting on him.
Hmm.
So he had to fix the past timeline to make sure that he and his brother and sister would actually be born.
I think that was one of the first movies that had the fading photograph trope.
Possibly.
Probably.
It's at least one of the earlier ones, or at least one of the mainstream early ones that I remember.
The second one, they go to the future. The doc takes Marty to the future to today, October 21st, 2015, to save their kids, Marty's kids. And while they're there, the Biff Tannen of the future uses the time machine to go to the Biff Tannen in 1955 and give him an almanac listing out all the outcomes for all sporting events up to the year 2000, thus allowing young Biff to become rich. So when they go back to 1985, Biff's in control. So there's your alternate timeline there.
Hmm.
And then in the third one, they're all the way back in 1885.
With historical Biff.
Griff. No,
Yeah.
Buford. Buford Tannen. Mad Dog Tannen. Griff was the future
historical
one.
Biff.
I actually like the third one. I know a lot of people give it a lot of shit, but I really enjoyed the third one
I loved it.
as a standalone.
I had fun with the whole trilogy, but it's been a good while since I've watched any of them.
And from what I remember from the Telltale game, the DeLorean shows up at Marty's front door with a note from the doc. And Marty has to go back in time to meet up with a younger, college-aged Doc to rescue present Doc. I forget why. And they actually do a whole lot of time travel in that one. Because it's like all the Telltale games, it's episodic. There's 5 parts, I think. And I think each part takes place in a different year.
Nice.
I think they even go...
That up.
It was pretty cool. Two parts of the Penny Arcade one was Telltale? Maybe not. That might have been somebody else. Whatever.
Going back to time travel.
Get it? Going back. Pun intended.
See, some of the others that we tossed on there were the rebooted or the newest Star Trek movie franchise from 2009 created an alternate timeline because Romulan time travel. Never mind that Romulan mining spaceships probably shouldn't have time travel abilities, but
Well, no, wasn't it something about the red stuff?
yeah, the red matter created a weird black hole that somehow warped time and sent them to the past, and
Makes
then
perfect
that
sense.
changed everything, and basically Deus Ex lens flare.
Oh, I get it. I was confused about that.
I'm still waiting for that reboot series to eventually reveal that they're in the mirror universe, and all the Enterprise crew are actually the evil versions, and then Spock can grow his stupid little goatee. Considering how weird and sad that universe is compared to the original. And that's one of those alternate timelines where they have yet to fix it.
I don't think they're going to.
Yeah, there's no real signs that they're going to be able to fix that. But you never know.
It's an excuse to do a reboot, basically, without angering everybody.
Well, they angered everyone anyway. Because nostalgia. And although it's only happened once so far, the anime and manga fairy tale has had time travel in it to send people to the past to prevent 50 bajillion dragons from wreaking havoc, even though they basically end up doing that anyway because they screw up and just repeat history to a degree, just with a little bit of extra knowledge. And one of their characters can actually reverse time across the entire planet for about 12 seconds, at the cost of basically the rest of her life. Because fair is fair.
I'm sure that doesn't come up ever.
It only came up the once. And then she became an old crone. Can't really do much against that. But it did kind of create an alternate timeline in that the current universe, everyone survived rather than got eaten by dragons. So it's actually one of those where the alternate universe is better, presumably.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm not sure what the next one is.
That one's mine. So the movie, if you've seen it, you probably know it as Primer, although I hear the official pronunciation is Primer, and there's probably some UK versus US English language pronunciation shenanigans going on. But basically, it's a go back in time and things happen movie with some twists that I won't get into. But basically, they come up with this. They accidentally discover time travel, trying to do something else. They're trying to create an anti-gravity device or something. I don't remember. And they accidentally create time travel instead.
Anti-grav, time travel, same thing.
And so they've got this box that they can go into and go back in time somehow. I don't remember the details. It's been a while. But at a certain point, they discover that they can put a box inside of another box and have double versions of them go back in time. And there's a lot of weird, like, how do you close the paradox issues going on? And then there's a weird ending that raises even further questions. What's interesting about this one is that they don't, dumb it down for modern audiences. It's extremely scientific. And while maybe not necessarily accurate, they do not, there's a thing where, you're talking about a wormhole, so you take a piece of paper and you do a little foldy bend thing and put your pencil through it. There's none of that kind of thing. So it's very dense and it's very dry, but it's sort of fascinating. And you don't really know what's going on or who's going on half the movie. So it's a very interesting suspense thriller.
I'm intrigued.
And I think it's usually streaming on Netflix. It might still be on there. I added this one, the Harry Potter Time Turner, which is a thing that makes you go back in time for a little bit. Or go into the future. There's apparently something where some wizard went to the future and then his future version of himself killed him, and then they both got wiped out of existence. Something.
Sounds about right.
And then a bunch of time turners were stolen from the ministry, and no one knows where they are.
There's some when.
There's problems with the time turners in that they're used very sparingly, where I feel like they could be used to great effect and solve most of the problems that occur in the Harry Potter series.
It was
Oh no,
never.
Sirius Black fell into some horrible alternate dimension mirror. We should probably grab one of those time turners and go back in time and push them the other way next time.
From what I've seen from the books and the movies, though, the time turners don't really help create alternate universes so much as help you just travel through time, and then it was all shown that everything they did had already actually happened
Oh, so
in
maybe this would
future
go into the
present.
self-fulfilling, predestined time travel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
they
'Cause I
thought
remember, yeah. You
the
definitely
grift really they were
basically,
the one that saved it.
excuse me.
Go
It
ahead.
was like you literally just went back in time, however far you turned the time turner. And so multiple copies of you would exist in the same time period.
But it was predestined, and that's why the teacher gave them the time turner, because they basically had to.
Well, Hermione got the time turner because she took on too much coursework, and the only way she could go to all her classes was if she could be in multiple places at the same time. That was literally the only reason she had one, and she was the only student they trusted with a time turner who would not abuse it.
Well, I guess my question is if it's a self-fulfilling, predestined thing, then she wouldn't be able to abuse it. Otherwise, she would be predestined to abuse it. Time travel's messy.
Yeah. I mean, spoilers, kind of. I mean, the movie and the book have been out for years, but they did use it in Prisoner of Azkaban to change history, but then it's implied, like, when you go back, you realize that all the events you thought were happening were being manipulated. Like,
Mm.
in the movie, they're hiding out in Hagrid's place, and the minister is on their way to execute Buckbeak. And the only reason they know about it is because Harry gets hit in the back of the head with a rock, and that rock was thrown by Hermione, who had already traveled back in time to be there and stop what was going on. So yeah, it's definitely self-fulfilling prophecy stuff.
Okay. Well, we'll talk more about self-fulfilling prophecy stuff in a little bit. I put down also a lot of video games use time travel to various extents. Usually the whole copy clone mechanic, where you go back in time. So you go over, you press a button to open a door that you can't get to, but then you go back in time, and then your current self runs over to hit the button, which opens the door, which means you can jump through it. And then I guess the idea is that the current version of you basically dies or gets destroyed, but you get to go through the door, but all your copies get screwed and sometimes die. And a couple things, Braid did that. There was a game about pie, the food pie. I don't remember what it was called. It involved like a guy that really liked pie. I don't remember what it was. But it's on Steam. It's an indie game. It's pretty cheap, and it's probably even cheaper now. Uh, Anyone else think of any video games where you had that mechanic where you went back in time and did stuff?
I know Will had a whole list of Zelda games.
I don't know if any of them exactly had that mechanic. A lot of them had time travel. And some of them it was kind of implied, like the whole learning of the Song of Storms in Ocarina of Time, where you learn the song in the future from a guy, then go back in time and teach him the song because in the past he doesn't know it. He learns it from you after teaching it to you in the future, which
Yeah,
is
that
quirky.
breaks timelines quite a bit.
Yeah. But other than that, it's just general, like there's 2 time periods and you have to go back and forth between them. Majora's Mask has a Groundhog's Day thing where you repeat the same day over and over again. And some things reset, but you get to keep key items, so you can do things differently.
Forgot about that.
It's like the first time you show up on the first day, you have nothing, but the second time you show up on the first day, in different forms you could take and whatnot. So even though you're living the same day, you can do different things, which is interesting. There's a whole bunch of Zelda games that have time travel or revolve around it. A Link to the Past, obviously, has had time travel. That one.
I was just reading your notes about a couple books, and it reminded me of another one that I've already forgotten. Oh, the going way back in time trope. And I was thinking of the Army of Darkness. Fits into the go way back in time time travel trope. And Will, you had a couple on your notes.
Yeah, the Time Machine. Well, that was way into the future.
And that's actually a really good book.
Yeah.
There's a lot of old classic books that a lot of people rave about that I hate, like The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, which is a terrible book. It makes no sense and is stupid and it's extremely obvious what's going on. But everyone's dumb, I guess? I don't know. But The Time Machine is actually one that I read that I was like, oh, finally, a book that I was supposed to read in high school that's actually good and not complete garbage.
That was one I thought of. A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court was another one I thought of. I never actually read that one, but I've seen movie variations of it.
Like A Knight's Tale?
A Knight's Tale. A Kid in King Arthur's Court, which I think was like the Disney version. I actually think one of the Bill and Ted movies has a section that's like that, where they go back to medieval times.
Yep.
Some of the other things, Ed brought up Quantum Leap, which I suppose fits into alternate timelines, considering your main character is going into the minds and bodies of people in the past and then manipulating the past to solve problems.
Yeah, it's not technically a multiverse. That's where I was about to put it. But I believe everything is singular timeline.
It's not a multiverse. It is just altering the past and on a relatively small scale, considering it's just person to person. Although there were various questions raised, considering how some of the last few episodes went down.
Another one I had in my notes, I'm not sure which category this will fit into, but there was a decent amount of time travel related stuff in Final Fantasy VIII.
I think that's one of the only ones. No, that's actually probably one that I was going to play but never got around to.
There's a bit of time travel in it. I can sort of talk about it without spoiling too much. There are points where members of the main cast will pass out, and when they wake back up, they're in the minds of other people. 3 specific people always. And as you see the events unfolding around those 3 specific people, it becomes apparent that these are events that took place in the past. And you're basically getting a bird's eye view of events that took place several years ago, before the main characters were even born. And I could go into more detail, but that might cause spoilers, and I don't know if anyone wants me to avoid spoilers or not.
Probably.
Yeah. But there is some time travel, and then the end of the game gets really trippy with time travel. And the interesting, I won't reveal how, but the interesting paradigm of all of time being compressed into a singularity. So that all of time... It was weird. All of time existed in a single point. So So that there was basically just the present only, and everything was happening all at once. It was quirky.
The other alternate timeline ones that came up was the movie Butterfly Effect, where it's Ashton Kutcher. He's able to read his old notebooks and movies and stuff and time travel through his own timeline to those moments and alter it, and then go back to the comparative present, but every time he does something, it changes things.
And makes it worse.
Pretty much. And depending on which version of the ending you believe in or decide to watch, things either go well or not so well, depending on your perspective. I thought that one was actually a pretty clever movie. I enjoyed that one, even though I find the actor to be rather silly at times.
Speaking of quantum leap multiverse theory, you can't talk about multiverses without talking about the show Sliders.
As long as you're ignoring some of the seasons where it got downright absurd.
I've only seen the first couple seasons. I know a few key things that happened, but I don't really know how it wraps up or if it ever got a chance to wrap up.
There was a final episode.
Okay, I'm going to have to go through that. I think they're on Hulu, if I remember correctly. There's so many things I have to watch. God.
But yeah, basically every episode was a different parallel universe where things were slightly different or very different, and there were even different time periods depending on the Earth and how it revolved around the sun, or some weird, absurd sciencey explanation.
I know there was an episode where there were dinosaurs.
Yep. I think there were a couple even.
And there's an episode where the green light means stop and the red light means go.
That was the first one.
Was that the first episode?
Yep, that was the first world he traveled to, and he didn't even realize it.
Oh, yeah.
That's similar.
Right.
And then it all goes downhill from there.
In story as well as plot.
I question some of the decisions they made with that show, but that's because I really enjoyed it, and some of the choices they made frustrated me. Which I guess shows that it was good writing, if I actually became involved.
I'm trying to think of a movie. Oh, okay. Last minute additions to the notes.
Uh-huh.
Although talking about that one might spoil the whole movie.
Well, before you decide on that, let's actually roll into that segment of the circular or self-fulfilling or just predestined time travel series or movies or games or books or whatever. First one that was tossed on there was the Terminator series.
What's interesting about this one is that it's not a true self-fulfilling predestined, but that there's a single point and a single event that's predestined. And how you get to that point and what happens after is subject to change. But the one thing that is unchanging is that singularity, which makes things more complicated.
In Doc changed, no matter what you do. If you do try to change it, the universe will just find a way to alter it to what it's supposed to be. But everything around it is still relatively fluid. And I haven't watched, I think, the last two movies in that series, so I don't know what they're up to now at this point.
Fan service.
Sounds about right. And the next one tossed on there was Looper, which I have not seen yet, but I keep meaning to.
It's a very good movie, and the time travel stuff doesn't spoil the actual real stuff that happens in the movie. It's sort of like the time travel just happens in this universe.
It's just a thing.
Yeah, it's just a thing, and it really has nothing to do with the through line of the story. It gives characters a reason to do things, but basically the idea is that I should have kept the tab open. That actually explained everything very succinctly. But basically, people in the future that want to get rid of somebody and disappear them, basically bring them back in time, tied up and gagged, with a bunch of silver tied to their back. And the guy called the Looper, who is in the past, shoots that guy in the head immediately when he appears, and then takes all the silver and goes away. And the benefit of that is that there's no evidence in the past that this person is a real person that exists, so there's no like fingerprints that would match. And in the future, that person just literally has disappeared, so there's no real evidence in that direction either. And things get interesting when one of the Loopers goes rogue, and then that basically kicks off the rest of the movie. And this is basically a circular, self-fulfilling timeline because the events in the past directly have an effect on the events of the present. It's hard to say past and present because both time points take place in the future. One's like 2044 and one's even further than that, something like that. But basically, if the guy in the past does something, then the thing in the future happens in a specific way. And shenanigans happen. And then there's other stuff that happened about 2/3 of the way through the movie that change everything. So I'm not going to spoil it. And I've decided not to spoil the other one that I added to this list because just saying that it fits into this movie, that this movie is about time travel technically kind of ruins the ending. It's a science fiction movie that came out recently. Those people that have seen it probably know what I'm talking about. It involves a bookcase, and I'll leave it at that, and that should clue into everyone else which one I'm talking about. I would consider that self-fulfilling because the things that happened earlier in the movie were a direct result of what happened later in the movie.
The only other time loop that I would toss in there that came to mind was a story arc from Justice League Unlimited, where they have the Justice League and the Justice Lords. And the Justice Lords are a little more totalitarian than the Justice League, primarily because they lose the Flash. And it's brought about in that it wasn't an alternate universe, but an actual time loop brought around by none other than Lex Luthor, because Lex Luthor, he likes to cause shenanigans. And the ending episode of how that one played out was one of my favorites in that series. Mainly because of how all those characters managed to figure out how to not have everything go explodey and die. As things tend to do whenever Lex Luthor kind of loses track of things. And then we kind of wrap up this whole series with the comical time travel media, or just ones that don't really have repercussions or any explanation as to, well, you've pulled people out of time or you've done this or that, what happens now? And I think a good example of that would be Bill and Ted, both of the movies, really. They pull a lot of people from history, primarily for a history report. It's never really detailed if that has any repercussions on actual history, or do they manage to just magically return them to the moment where they left them so nothing goes sideways, or it's never really explained. They just have fun. And I happen to like both of those movies, even though the second one is considerably sillier than the first.
I haven't seen the first one in a very long time, but I've seen the second one repeatedly. Chess is hard.
I forget who the actor was who played Death in the second movie, but he did a very good job. He probably had a bit of fun with that.
And whoever added the second one is one that I totally forgot about. There's another game. There's no time to explain. I don't know if I ever finished it. I don't remember the premise. But I remember I own the game.
I've seen other people play it, and basically you start out in your house just kind of jamming out to music when your wall explodes and a future version of yourself shows up with a ray gun and says, "Listen to me, I am you from the future. There is no time to explain." And then gets kidnapped by a giant monster and you have to take his ray gun and follow him. And throughout the game you keep going through alternate timelines of yourself, meeting different versions of yourself who have different powers to help you get through the levels. And towards the end, you get to work with multiple versions of yourself in tandem.
It looks like a very fun game. Although there is very little explanation.
That's half the fun. The game, I think, is meant to be very fast-paced, so like it's titled, there's no time to explain. I think aliens are involved.
Yeah.
And one I just thought of that I think fits into the parallel universe, parallel story arc, or maybe multiverse, that some people might groan at, but I liked this movie, even though a lot of people hated it, was the Super Mario Brothers movie.
I was entertained by that movie.
I
can understand why it might disappoint some.
I was the correct age when that movie came out. I feel like if you were not the correct age when that movie came out, it is horrendously bad.
I remember watching it and thinking it was hilarious. But it definitely has like that parallel theory, because it's two worlds. There's our world, and then there's the other world, which instead of sapiens becoming the dominant species and evolving, it was the dinosaurs that remained and evolved. So everyone is descended from lizards instead of primates.
That reminds me, Once Upon a Time, the show, is a parallel universe where the parallel universes are linked directly to each other by the characters' actions. One's a fairy tale universe and one's the real world. And I only saw the first season, but there's some clues about which characters in which worlds know that there's another universe versus has no idea there's another universe. Most of the characters aren't aware that there's another universe, but there's one specific character that I think people know what I'm talking about, that it's pretty clear he knows that he's in both universes and he's fucking with everyone. He's kind of a dick about it.
Yeah, I almost forgot about... I thought of Super Mario Brothers before and was going to add it and then forgot again. But I think that fits under the alternate universe theory.
Yeah.
Sure.
And if you toss Once Upon a Time in there, I'd also throw in the 10th Kingdom, which has the alternate or parallel universe, where there's a lot of fairy tale overlaps, although more in parody than seriousness.
Calvin, before we move on to news and highlights reel, I believe that I promised you that my nano novel would contain excessive amounts of time travel. And I wanted you to tell me which version of time travel you wanted me to incorporate into it. Let me lay out the general theme. It's basically an action movie, trope-filled, disgusting mess parody movie. Think of like The Transporter plus Fast and Furious plus a bunch of martial arts movies plus a bunch of just, it's going to be so tropey and fan servicey, it's going to be gross, which is why that's why I pre-bought the winner's t-shirt, because I'm pretty sure I'm going to finish this one, because it's stupid. So which type of time travel would you like in this novel, Got him.
Multiverse.
Multiverse. Oh shit. Okay.
With a plot like that, multiverse is perfect.
Yes. Do you want a directly linked multiverse where actions from one set of characters directly affects the other's set of characters indiscriminately and hilariously?
Not necessarily, but if you want to go that route, I will not stop you. I'd like to see where you go with it.
Okay.
If you do decide that route.
Okay. I will incorporate a multiverse. I already know there's going to be one time travel loop back. So maybe I can fuck up that universe so bad it creates another timeline, and then the two timelines I'll write in parallel for the rest of the novel. Oh, fuck you, Calvin. How many F-bombs are we allowed on this podcast?
For some reason now I'm thinking of all the frickin' multiverse stories and references out there.
We'll list them off one by one.
Both DC and Marvel have done alternate universes, parallel universes, multiverses,
Infinite
universal
universes.
reboots. New 52.
But, okay, what if it was all of your favorite comic book character heroes, but they're all zombies instead?
Done it.
I know, that was...
I actually liked that series. That was pretty entertaining.
You would. And there's a multiverse one where Deadpool goes and kills every single other character. And the multiverse is through the old comics, literally. And to get to other comics, he has to talk to some weird Time Lord sludge guy. I don't remember all the details.
No, I don't remember that one specifically, but I know they've also done like Deadpool kills the Marvel Universe, and it's primarily because the Watcher sees it, and then he kills the Watcher because why not? One last multiverse one that I was thinking of, I think it's called The One, and I want to say it was Jet Li, but it is. I haven't
You're
seen
correct.
it since it's basically
Yes.
come out. Okay.
Yeah, it's Jet Li.
Yeah. But that was a clever multiverse where everything is technically tied to each other.
Is that the one where he goes and he has to... I don't think this spoils it, because I think this is the entire premise of the movie, where he has to go and kill every other version of himself?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For every version of you that dies, the rest of you that survive grow stronger. But if all of them die except for one, theoretically that one would be unstoppable or immortal or possibly both. Which is basically the premise of the whole movie.
Mm.
I haven't seen Time Crimes yet. That's another go back in time movie that I should see.
And I also, not to extend this conversation for forever,
You have
But I
4
just remember-
minutes.
World of Warcraft had a bit of time travel in it, involving the point of evil dragons going back in time and trying to change history, and you having to go back in time to make sure the timeline doesn't change. And then they went ahead and released an entire expansion, which is just going back in time, which didn't make sense to me because now we're going back to change the timeline, even though we used to try and maintain the timeline.
Isn't that how Skyrim works too? When you get the Elder Scroll, don't you go
I
back
never
in
got that.
time to kill the dragon?
I never got that far. I never got very far in the main storyline in any Elder Scrolls game. I get way too distracted in side quests.
Well, it's good because the main story in Skyrim is pretty bad.
I have too much fun exploring around and doing other stuff.
Mm.
Saving the world can wait. I have to become the ultimate assassin thief.
Where's my damn hyperbolic time chamber? Do you age in the hyperbolic time chamber? I don't remember.
Yes.
Oh, so that's pretty dangerous. You don't want to spend too much time there.
Well, you age at a considerably slower rate than the outside world. I think it
Oh,
was like 1 year outside is no, 1 year inside is 24 hours outside. Wait,
right. But do you age at the rate that you're in the hyperbolic time chamber? Like, if you go in for 24 hours, do you come back out a year older?
they never
Or
really clarified that, but that doesn't surprise me.
I want my hyperbolic time chamber. God damn it!
Well, go up to Kami's lookout and borrow it.
All right, pretty high up there. I might have to go to Bespin first.
Yeah, you just have to get past Mr. Pobo. Good luck with that.
I mean, technically, if you use the hyperbolic time chamber too much and get really old, you could just get all the Dragon Balls and wish to be younger again.
That's a good point. But what if Krillin dies while I'm on that quest?
Oh
And
well.
But what if Yamcha dies?
Whatever. It's all about Android 16. Android 18? Which one's the girl?
18, I think. Shall we move on to the highlights reel?
Yes. You technically have 30
Oh,
seconds.
well, for the viewers and listeners, if you want to add your own recommendations for time travel, or if we've missed anything or gotten stuff wrong, by all means, let us know.
And we'll go back into the past and re-record this episode with all the corrections.
Which is why we didn't make any mistakes.
Yep.
All right, time for the highlights reel, where we have a few things to talk about. So let's pop them up on screen share for people. First one up, speaking of time travel, and they are discussing a prequel.
Why?
That is a valid question, considering the prequel would focus on John McClane's younger years as a cop, explaining how he became as badass as he was by the time the first Die Hard movie came about.
But the first Die Hard movie, the whole premise is he's just a normal everyday guy.
Exactly.
You're literally ruining the first movie by putting in a prequel.
That's why a lot of people are confused on this premise, and it's not a sure thing, since they are still looking for a screenwriter to actually write this supposed prequel.
I hope that humanity comes together in this one instance and no one writes that screenplay.
As much as I love this franchise, I feel like they have wrapped it up to the point where you can't really add on to it.
I haven't even seen any past the third one.
The fourth one wasn't that bad. I enjoyed it.
I
saw part of the
like
fourth
the
one. I actually have the fourth one. I just haven't sat down and actually watched it in its entirety. But the parts I saw, I liked.
Yeah.
Yeah, the fourth one, that's the one with Justin Long, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that one was fine. 5 was dumb, but whatever. And 6 was... Wait a minute. No, wait, I thought there were already 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5... I thought there are already 6. Hold on.
Die Hard, Die Hard, Die Harder, Die Hard with a Vengeance, Live Fear, Die Hard, and A Good Day to Die Hard. That's 5.
Yeah. So this may or may not become a thing. I'm personally kind of hoping that this specific concept for a prequel does not become a thing, because that does pretty much negate the entire premise of who this character is. And unless they have a really good way to retcon that, chances are I would skip it, unless it just happens to be on TV and I have nothing better to do, which, considering I don't really watch TV anymore, will be very unlikely. Next up, an interesting piece for those of you who might be writing military-based stories come Nano season, or just those who are appreciative of realistic logistics in regards to characters and travel, especially if you're going like medieval and armor and carrying around supplies and stuff like that. But this article goes a bit into detail as to just how much weight does the modern soldier actually carry in their packs, which I've never really thought of, to be fair, but when you think about it, all of that gear does get pretty heavy, and depending on how heavy the character themselves are, that factors into what their what's the word now? I'm blanking on it, but it it's a very interesting infographic and goes into the weight of various pieces of armor and weaponry and just stuff they have to carry, with a few videos mixed in for good measure. And I never even really thought about parachutes and how heavy those get, but one of the Army's parachutes with harness weighs 38 pounds, which is pretty much the weight limit for what I am allowed to lift up and carry. So I would make a horrible soldier. So yeah, an interesting one worth checking out if you are interested in such things. Next up, Story Bundle. They put out a new one. And because it's still October, it's Halloweeny, specifically with monsters. And as usual, the dealie with Story Bundle is you can pay whatever you like for the first tier, so like $1 and up. And then the second tier, you have to pay, I'm going to guess this one's a $10 one. Nope, it is a $15 bundle. So if you pay $15 or more, you get the secondary tier. And if you do the $1 and up tier, you would get the Love-Hate Case Files by John Raby and Donald J. Bingle, Jurassic Dead by David Sackmeister and Rick Chessier, Pack Dynamics by Julie Frost, Cayo Hueso by Keith R.A. DeCandido, Working Stiff by Kevin J. Anderson, and Empty Rooms by Jeffrey J. Marriott. And if you went the $15 and up route, you would also get For This Is Hell by Aaron Rosenberg and Steven Saville, Enter the Janitor by Josh Voigt, The Wolf at the End of the World by Douglas Smith, Monster Academy by Matt Forbeck, Helmet Head by Mike Barron, and Mammoth Dawn by Kevin J. Anderson and Gregory Benford. And this one went up recently, so as of this recording, you still have 15 days and change to go check it out. I'm intrigued by some of these books. I might have to look into this one over the next 2 weeks. And Humble Bundle also tossed up a new book bundle. Yet another graphic novel collection called the Utterly Gigantic Collection from Top Cow Productions. I am personally not familiar with Top Cow Productions, but I looked at the premise of some of these books and I am intrigued. There's a lot more here than I would have expected.
And I like what they're doing in that they're putting in issue number 1 or 1 through something, and not like, hey, here's issue 7. Now buy all the rest of them. This is almost like a demo preview. Like, read volume 1 of all of these things, and then if you like one, then go get more. And I like this a lot better than some of the other bundles I've seen.
And similar to Story Bundle, there is a $1 and up first tier, which nets you 12 books in this one. And this one, it looks like it covers basically an entire overall series of the ninth generation series. And then there's the ever-changing average price tier, where you pay the average price of what everyone's paid so far, currently at $10.70. And you'd get the second tier. And then if you pay $15 or more, you would get the third tier. So starting things off with the $1 and up first tier, you would get ninth generation issues 1 through 5, which is a nice primer on that overall storyline. The ninth generation Hidden Files number 1, Witchblade volumes 1 through 8, Artifacts volume 1 through 6, Apollo 9 number 1, Artemis 9 number 1, Athena 9 number 1, Poseidon 9 number 1, Aphrodite 9 Rebirth volumes 1 and 2, Aphrodite 9 Hidden Files number 1, Aphrodite 9 / Cyberforce number 1, and Cyberforce Rebirth volumes 1 and 2. So you basically get a full primer on that entire universe, it looks like. And it actually sounds like a really interesting universe. And I like what they've done with some of the Greek mythology. This one I'm very tempted to check out. If you do the second tier, where it's the ever-rotating average, you would also get Freshman volumes 1 and 2, Down volume 1, Tales of Honor volume 1, Genius volume 1, The Tithe volume 1, The Darkness Origins volumes 1 through 4, and Postal volume 1.
There's more. Scroll down a little bit further.
Oh, hey, there's more. Along with those, under the Tier 2 with the gyrating average, you would get Midnight Nation Volume 1, Rising Stars Compendium, Berserker Volume 1, and they will add more as this bundle continues before the time runs out. But we're still not done, because there is the $15 third tier, where if you go $15 and up, you get all of that, plus Switch number 1, Sunstone volumes 1 through 3, and 9th generation issue 6. So if you went $15, you get 9th generation issues 1 through 5 and 6, which is a nice touch. Looking at all of that, I'm not as surprised as to the suggested total pricing on this one.
Yes, this one makes a lot more sense.
They claim that this collection would cost you a total of up to $664 if purchased separately. I'm going to presume those are in print trade issues pricing. Otherwise, I'm really not familiar with just one-off ebook comic pricing. But $664 for comics, even digital ones, seems a bit much. So I would much rather pay the $15 to get all of that. This one just kicked off today, I believe, so as of this recording, you have 13 days and change to go check this one out. And those are the highlights for this week. Which means time to talk productivity and inspiration. What have we been up to this past week? Since the last episode, I interviewed a book reviewing duo, and I'm hoping to get that audio sent over to Will to clean up and put together so we can toss it up for people to listen to. And I've also scheduled an author interview for next week, which will probably be a video one, but we're not going to do it live, so you'll have to wait probably 2 weeks or so from now before we get it up. But it's nice to be getting those scheduled, since both of these I've been trying to work on since Kineticon. So kind of gives you an idea of how long some of these take to finally coordinate. And I did all sorts of adulting over the weekend, and not really the fun kind, but the necessary kind, where I helped with appliance and furniture shopping, and helping yet another friend move. Because everyone is moving. It is weird. People need to stop moving. And I also figured out some goals and milestones for the rest of 2015, even though there's only 2.5 months left. But mainly figure out my goal for how much debt I want to get paid down, how much savings I want to get up, and just what my recording schedule is for the rest of the year in regards to the visual novels I've been covering, World End Economica and Everlasting Summer, which is an accurate title because it just won't end. And to round all that off, I've kind of gotten hit kind of hard with just a cold that won't really come in full force, yet won't really go away. And compound that with general work anxiety and ridiculous deadlines, and I have not gotten any other productivity done this week, and that is frustrating because I wanted to do more. So I'm hoping by next week I'll be able to balance that out a bit. What has Will been up to since last week?
Let's see. I got another part of the next chapter of Roommate roughed out, which is good. And I haven't really mentioned it on here before, I don't think, but I've been trying to keep up with a kind of workout and diet regime to try and lose weight, and I've been keeping up with that for a few weeks now, which makes me happy.
Yay.
But like CJ, I got sick. Unlike CJ, instead of having to deal with a small sick over a period of time, I got hit by a Mack truck yesterday. I was completely useless yesterday, could not even brain. So that's slowing me down. I'm still not feeling super well today, but much better than yesterday, thankfully. So I fell a little bit behind on things, and that makes me upset. But I'm hoping to play catch up between this episode and the next episode and just be all caught up and work really hard.
And how about Justin?
I'll just go in order. I did a lot of stuff in the last week, not all of it very useful or productive. My Nano Day 1 marathon is a go. I am committed to it. There will be more details on next week's episode on how to get in on that. And if you keep an eye on the website, I'm sure we'll be posting something up on there soon. Work has been bad. I'm not going to get into it because it's behind me. And I think I've got everything worked out now, and we're going to be okay. But it's been very bad. Last weekend was awful. This week was even worse. But I've rounded the corner on it. So I think we're okay. Because work was so bad, I came home a couple days ago thinking, you know what? I don't want to be an abject failure. There's got to be something I can do at home that I can make myself feel better by actually completing it. So I set up my fish tank. It's a very large upgrade over the tiny fish tank with the tiny fish in it that's slowly dying because of the water quality. And this is a 55-gallon tank, and I'm only going to have like 2 or 3 goldfish in it. So I think they'll be okay now. And it's in a new location in the apartment, so I can actually do water changes very easily, where it was impossible to do water changes in the other tank.
Hopefully your current fish survived.
The one remaining fish that survived is still survived, and he should be able to go in the tank next week. Probably this coming weekend, I'll toss him in. Gotta let the tank cycle and get all the bacteria and the nitrates and stuff going. I have also, for the last few days, been on 100% Soylent. 2.0 edition. That is a 400-calorie beverage that supposedly has all of the nutrients that you need divided by 5, because usually you would go for a 2,000-calorie diet. And so it has all the vitamins, minerals, protein, carbs, everything you need. I have not had any terrible side effects yet, but I'm sure I will be posting after 1 week of this. I don't plan on being 100% on this 100% of the time. I figure during the weekdays I'll probably be on it minus 1 or 2 meals. And then on the weekends it's kind of a free-for-all. Probably be a 50% Soylent and 50% real food. So I do plan on mixing it up with real food every now and then. But the 100% Soylent has finally started working out for me, and I've already started losing weight again, and I've also been going out on walks. So between those two things, I should be on a good track. And then once I lose a certain amount of pounds, I'll go to the doctor and get a physical and make sure that some other horrible side effect isn't happening, like massive kidney failure.
And that would be a problem.
But I'm sure we're fine. Also, I have a horror movie write-up incoming. I've already got the outline. I just need to finish writing it. I watched both the original Omen and Rosemary's Baby, which are 2 Possessed by Satan movies, and they were very similar because they came out around the same time. So there's some old horror movie tropes that were interesting because a lot of new horror movies have borrowed from the tropes that those old movies have set up. Like the idea of a lot of slasher movies is that, oh, a bunch of teenagers are doing drugs and having sex, and then, oh, some horrible killer comes and kills everyone. So it turns out back in the day, a lot of the horror movies where Satan was involved, he doesn't just show up in random people, besides The Exorcist, I think, is a notable exception. But a lot of the other movies, it was basically they set up that these people that all this bad stuff happens to are not really good people. One of them involves ritualistic adultery, comical, because basically they go in to a new house that they buy, and the girl just cannot wait to, in the movie, because this came out in the 60s, to make love on the floor where there's no furniture. So, I mean, making love is fine, but when it's on the floor and no furniture, it's a little different. So they set up that these people are disgusting freaks, and bad things happen to them. So I'll be writing an extensive write-up on that. Quickly to round it out, I wrote my first useful Python program at work, which I used to great success, and hope to be doing more of that.
Cool.
I helped move a 450-pound I-beam.
For any particular reason, or?
A friend of mine is redoing his house, and his second floor is collapsing because the guy who put up the wooden beam did a terrible job, and it's not up to code. So he's fixing it.
Fun.
And I finally settled on a Twitter account name after many years of waffling between like 7 different ones. And I'll pimp that out later.
All right. And rounding us out, what has Calvin been up to?
Yeah, me. For a while, I didn't think I was doing anything because I couldn't remember anything that I did. And I realized I did do stuff.
Like become a robot?
Whatever. I'll deal with that later. Hopefully y'all can still hear me.
A little quiet, but yeah.
Let's see. I've been going to the gym some more. I've been going regularly, and averaging about twice a week. Try to go at least twice during the weekend, and see if I can make time during the weekend. It's working out pretty good. Hopefully, I'll have my summer body ready by sometime like midwinter.
You're being
Hopefully.
preemptive.
Yes. And the big challenge will be able to keep it that way till summer. That's the real challenge. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. I've also been watching some random YouTube videos and getting some inspiration from them to work on different things and restart a couple of things that has been sitting on the back burner for a while. So we'll see how that goes. And I think I mentioned I was working on a song last week, a song that I promptly forgot and then remembered again. After remembering where I wanted to go with it, I promptly hit a wall. But I'm slowly climbing over this wall, and hopefully sometime soon I can actually finish it. And hopefully you guys were able to hear what I just said.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's about it.
Cool. All right. Next up, events. November is way too close at this point. It's November 1st. Just a couple of weeks away. And it spans a whole month. I think Justin's the only one that's really ready for it at this point.
Oh, yes.
I'm getting there. I'm hoping to do some outlining and planning this Friday while I have it off before the nano plotting plans this weekend. That's going to be fun. It'll be nice to see everyone again. And no new events scheduled for next year as of yet. The others that we're contemplating are still pretty far off on the horizon, so that's actually pretty much it. That's all we've got for this episode, unless we happen to travel back in time later to add stuff into this. So if this episode happens to be 3 hours all of a sudden, hey, I guess we remembered stuff. But until we remember all that stuff and go back in time to add it in post, or not, I guess pre-post at that point, we're going to wrap things up. So until next time, if you want to check out any of the previous episodes of this podcast or any of the other shenanigans we get up to, from video games to conventions to just hanging out shenaniganry that we do, go check out the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, post some comments of stuff you find entertaining or things you feel we need to be corrected on. It happens often enough. I'm sure there's something out there that you can add to. You can also talk to us on social media. We're on Twitter at FCWordNinja, on Tumblr, fcwordninja.tumblr.com, and Facebook, facebook.com/fullcoveragewriters. And if you want to help fund some of our crazy various endeavors, from conventions to some new product R&D, go check out the Etsy store, etsy.com/shop/fullcoveragewriters, where we have all sorts of buttons and bookmarks and books and booklets and little plushy writer's blocks for everyone to enjoy. And if you want to find me, yeah, good luck with that. My crew can't even find me most of the time. But your best bet would be my personal Tumblr, which is fancypantswolf.tumblr.com. And as Nano season is upon us, my Nano ID is YGJunkie85, because that's who I was in 2003. And I'm just can't be bothered to change. Where can people track down Will?
You can usually find me on my Tumblr page at darkhom.tumblr.com. That's DARKHOM. You can check out sporadic updates on My Roommate's a Stripper at myroommatesastripper.tumblr.com. And you can always support me on my Patreon page at patreon.com/darkholm.
And how about Justin?
One thing, and that is not correct, so I'll talk about that later. You can find me at mechanicaljustin.com, where I'll be posting that aforementioned article. And you can find me on Twitter at MJOnTap, where I'll be posting little mini updates that don't require a full blog post. That'll kind of inspire me to keep going and talk about little silly things. So find me on there on Twitter, and that's all I'll pimp for now.
And how about Calvin?
Let's see. You can find me. Where can you find me? Instagram and Twitter are good places you can find me. There is. Let's see. My handle is CCW at CCWII there. Tumblr. Do I still use Tumblr? From time to time, yeah. Instacal.tumblr.com, and that's about it.
All right. With that, thank you everyone for joining us for episode 114 of Word Ninjas Live. We will come to you again in the future, 7 days from now, next Wednesday. Where episode 115, we are talking about Nano itself and any other writing challenges that we happen to think of and want to talk about. So join us next week for that. Until then, go do something creative. Go build a flux capacitor or steal a TARDIS or something. Go have some fun. And we'll see you all next time.